And we're live. So great Tuesday, Abigail. How you doing today?
I'm fabulous, fabulous. It's great to be here.
It's great to have you. And I thank you for being on the King Connections podcast. And the purpose behind the King Connections podcast, before we begin, is really about connecting with conscious leaders and giving conscious leaders an opportunity to have a discussion together to talk about how we're living a quote unquote conscious lifestyle, and more importantly, how others can learn from the work that we're doing, because we're working together to implement higher purpose type of activities. And my goal is to really connect with people like yourself and really build a movement around, because I believe that's how we can really make miracles happen. People connecting based on their principles and their values more so than these other, what I call tribes that our society forces us to be in. So I'm grateful to have you on the actual King Connections podcast today.
Oh, thank you so much for inviting me. And you're singing my song right now. So I'm really glad to know you here and now. And just so agree, can say yes and to everything you just said. So it's really nice to find a kindred spirit, if you will.
Absolutely, absolutely. Now, what I normally do is ask if you wouldn't mind just giving a little brief intro about yourself and your work, and then we can pretty much go into some questions based on your introduction.
Absolutely. So, yeah, I'm Abby Stason. And, my mission statement is to be an exceptional partner to the human race and planet and facilitate global awakening. And in that, the role I play in the world is I equip human beings and leaders with skills for a modern world and global economy. And that the focus is on skills to become more conscious, real practices that people can use in their day to day. As you get to know me, you'll see I'm pretty rubber meets the road, if you will. So we can talk all day long about being conscious, but what does that actually mean when we're living our lives and interacting with others?
Absolutely, absolutely. And I'm glad you said that, because that conscious word gets used a lot nowadays. It's a term, and um, based on that, what I've done to help me really identify myself and hold myself to a higher standard, I've come up with 8 virtues that I say that define how I want to behave as a conscious leader, that people can hold me accountable for when they actually meet me. And I just quickly go over those 8 virtues, and then I want to hear what your thoughts are on how you see yourself and which your virtues may be as well. So mine, number one, is being principle centered. Number two is being value driven. Number three is being action oriented. I believe that's something very few people are action oriented, right? We talk, but they don't put forth the action. Number four, being results focused. Number five is being growth minded. Number six is being a servant leader. And number seven is being an accountability acceptor. And then number eight is having a grateful spirit. So for me, that's the 8 virtues of a conscious leader, in my opinion. And those are the things I want to be held accountable to, that I work towards sustaining in that space on a daily basis. So I just kind of want to get your thoughts on how you may define a conscious leader, and if virtues that you may share, characteristics that you look for as well.
Yeah, thank you for sharing those. We are BFFs already. And I want to step back for a moment. Thank you for sharing the eight. And what really stands out for me that I already love about you is you use the word behavior. I think that's what gets overlooked is how do we behave together? And how I see conscious leadership is this intersection between awareness and impact,
Mm,
right? So consciousness means to be aware, among other things. But this loop of that I'm aware of something and then seeing my impact on others keeps me constantly learning then about my behavior and how that impacts both me and the world around me. So I think that's the missing piece is the impact on others. And I love your eight, your big eight, I'll call them. I have a similar way that I approach it. I call it commitments. So I have many more commitments than that, but they're a set of skills that actually I teach. So presence, emotional intelligence, how to speak through presence, how to listen, how to thrive consciously, how to integrate and rest, even how to spend consciously, as having healthy self-esteem and being conscious of that. So I see being conscious is a series of skills that you can use in your day to day. So I'm just adding to what you're saying, and I really appreciate and admire you, in we're in our alignment, that you're putting a stake in the ground for how you say you behave. I do the same thing through commitments. So use your language, my language, putting a stake in the ground for saying how I behave and keeping that feedback loop going is what makes for someone who's conscious and awake to themselves.
Absolutely. And I love the word you use, conscious commitments, you know, because I believe very few people are committed to things, you know, or hold themselves to that commitment. Like, for example, I've joined recently different pods on LinkedIn. I don't know if you're familiar with a pod on LinkedIn, but I'm new
Mm-hmm.
to a pod model. And I love the idea. It's like, okay, we can build content together, we can share content, we can, and we're committing to liking and commenting on each other's content on a daily basis, as well as creating content. But what I've discovered is it's the proverbial 80-20 rule, where you get like out of, if it's 40 people in the pod, you may get 10, if you're lucky, that's going to write posts every day, that's going to comment, like, and be engaged. And I see that's just in life, not just in the pod. So that we realize that's in life. And so for me, what I prefer to do is really try to identify those 20 within that 20, right? And really connect with those individuals who are committed, and they're going to actually follow through because they're looking for a change and they're looking to make a difference. And I think that that's your motivation for why you're doing it. That's the reason why you are being involved in anything. I think that's going to lead to a greater commitment than, say, perhaps, I just want some transactions. I just want a sale. I want a referral. So I think that's only going to be, your commitment is only going to be, as Stephen R. Covey talks about, if it's something urgent that comes up, that's going to win out over what's important. But I think if your conscious commitment, as you say, is something that's much more internal and much more connected to who you are as an individual, then important will always win out, regardless, because that's what you believe and that's what your behaviors will have shown and will continue to show going forward.
Agree. And like I said, we're BFFs again. So I love that you use, well, I love that you use the word transactions. Like consciousness is not about anything being transactional, like give to get. It's about showing up in alignment with who you are in the world. And I also want to echo what you say. It's not for the faint of heart. Putting a stake in the ground and saying, I'm going to behave in a certain way and I'm going to be responsible for my impact in the world. And not just my small world, but the greater good. It's not for the faint of heart.
Right.
And it's extremely satisfying though, because then I'm in the driver's seat and I can take responsibility and clean up my messes and make amends when necessary, and then learn from that. And then I continually grow, and my self esteem rises as a result of that. And let me add to what you're saying too: is it's easy, the 80-20 scenario in the pod you're talking about. There's a lot of buzzwords out there. Mindful, conscious, enlightened, awakened, all of these terms are all pointing to awareness and this impact. And it's one thing to talk about it, but it's another to actually embody the skills so that when I embody them, I behave in a certain way. And it doesn't mean that I'm perfect. It's not about perfection, but it is about awareness. And then I'm constantly adjusting my behavior and learning so that I'm showing up in a way where I experience more peace, ease, and freedom, even though situations get intense. And I'm aware of, with a lot of skill in navigating the human conditioning and being more conscious, I'm able to realize and navigate anything and know when I can't. Like there's some times to retreat and say, okay, I can't handle this. I need help, or I need support, or I need to back away from something. That's all good. But it just really is about stopping the sleepwalking.
Absolutely, absolutely. I love how the words you're using to describe it, it's like you, um, and this is the first time you and I have even connected. But it seems though because our spirits are so in line that we've been knowing each other for years, right? Like we can almost finish each other's sentences, right? And that's what I've learned from me because I would say later on in my life I realized what I'm really good at is, and I really became very interested in studying human behavior. Like I'm really curious about what makes a person act or not act, or to do what type of actions they're going to do, right? um, I'll give you an example. I moved to Baltimore City about maybe 5 years ago because I wanted to do conscious real estate development. I'm a former president and founder of the DC chapter of Conscious Capitalism. When John Mackey announced that he was going to do Conscious Capitalism, I love this model. I was a benefit corporation business in Maryland, and when he came out with Conscious Capitalism, I was like, that takes benefit corporation and gives it four core principles. It's easy to explain to folks. Benefit corporation was a little difficult to try to get people to wrap their minds around what it was and what we stood for. But long story short, I wanted to bring those core principles to real estate development. I said, I look at a city like Baltimore City. I want to bring that higher purpose to a real estate development. I want to make sure all the stakeholders benefit. I want to create a conscious culture, and be a conscious leader in the context that I can be held accountable to what I'm advocating as my core principles. Well, that exercise taught me a lot. It showed me that I really wasn't as ready as I thought I was going to be ready. And what I didn't understand was the human behavior of other people. And what I've learned was that they learn helplessness of some individuals that no matter what your intentions may be, if they don't see them themselves, they're not going to make those changes. So I say all that to say that's why I began to focus after COVID, and it taught me I'm looking now more for a tribe. And I define a tribe as a connectionally intelligent tribe of individuals who are conscious leaders, and we come together for the purpose of doing something greater than we can do alone. And connecting with people on their higher purpose and their principles. And I've defined what I consider to be 10 connecting threads that I believe you connect with someone on, it builds a stronger connection. And what I want to say to that point is this: what my experience with going through what I went through with development in Baltimore City, it taught me this. I no longer want to be positioned and forced to be in my societal tribe that the world has created these labels around us, where, man, black man, Baltimore City, all these other things, economics, with all the tribes, religion, whatever they may be. I realized that I have more in common with people and I can connect with them on their higher purpose. So, and their spirit and their gratefulness that you talked about before. Like before we even went live, the first thing you said is, I'm grateful to be on your podcast. And see, that energy right there changes the whole dynamics of how we're going to conversate, right? So I say all that just to kind of let you know how I'm thinking and where my space is. But at the same time, I wanted to bring the next question up, and I wanted to get the context set because you're also someone who we share passions. I'm working on the book. You finished the book, and your book is. I wanted to ask you what inspired you to write the book, the the evolution revolution, conscious leadership for information age. So I want to know what inspired you to write the book, and then can you lay out some of the key chapters or the key content of the book? Because I believe it's important that our listening audience understands. Because I think from what I looked at the book and looked at the outline structure, I'm definitely buying the book because things you talk about in the book is just like speaking directly to my soul. But I just want to give you an opportunity to really talk a little bit about the book for our listening audience and the importance of it.
Yeah, thank you for that. And, I'm really enjoying getting to know you, and thank you for sharing your experience in Baltimore and how you came to this. I just love hearing from you. So appreciate you sharing that. And thanks for the question. So I was on Wall Street for 20 years, so I have my own journey about being unconscious and suffering through that. And then finally waking up and saying, I just want to be in a group of people, around people who are committed to consciousness. Again, it's not about perfection. So I have my own shift of lifestyle and everything along those lines. And so I left Wall Street because what I really loved doing was leading and developing people, like grooming them, mentoring, because I have a commitment to growth and learning myself. So I left Wall Street to become an executive coach. And in that journey, I do a lot of coaching and technology in companies. And I started to share skills with people, best practices. And also, I started to accumulate questions that I was asked. So I accumulated about 400 to 500 questions. And then one day I sat down and I put them into themes because I noticed there were themes in them. So I started coaching around the themes. Questions like, how do I be a more effective leader? How do I be more peaceful? How do I manage tensions? How do I communicate clearer? How do I connect with people? How do I thrive? All of these questions. So I started teaching around them. And then, there was a period, and I'm not kidding, there was a period of about 3 months where 15 people said, well, you should write a book. Why haven't you written a book? You should write a book. So I said, okay, I guess now I'm an author. So I don't really consider myself an author, but I went ahead and put the skills into a book. And that's really where it came from. So the book's not about me. What Evolution Revolution is a handbook of skills to navigate the human condition, wake up and be more conscious, and especially when we're working alongside each other. That's where it's all about relating. We're relating right now, right? So we
Absolutely.
spend all our days relating. We don't sit in a vacuum by ourselves. So that's where that came from. And so sure enough, why don't you have an online course? So that's what I'm working on now. 7 people, why don't you have something online? So I listen to, and this is an important point too, I don't listen to what my ego says or what my mind says I should do. I listen to how can I contribute in the world, and listen to the signaling that comes in. So when 15 people are saying you should write a book, okay, that's signaling right there. And now more people are saying, why don't you have these courses? Everyone should be learning these skills. Okay, I hear you. So I'm producing for the world, for what wants to happen, rather than my mind saying, well, you should have an online course, you should write a book, you should do this, you should do that. That helps me then fulfill my role in the world. And how amazing that I get to do what I do in the world, the role I play. I mean, look who I get to meet right now and sit with. I get to sit with you and talk about being more conscious and hear your experience in Baltimore, and particularly being a Black man in the world in the United States. So I appreciate, that experience that you are in right now. So again, thank you.
Well, no, I appreciate, again, just the meet a person who has the experience that you have. I mean, that you've, like you said, you former Wall Street and decided to leave Wall Street, where people who will work their whole life to get on Wall Street and get into that culture, and get into that mindset that it takes to be successful in Wall Street. And you walked away from that and to pursue a more, I would say, holistic path. And that's what I love about being a conscious leader and creating a conscious business, is because now we can actually live that, and then live it so well that we create enough value that we're able to generate revenue for our lifestyles from that, right? So it's not, okay, well, I do this in the daytime, but at night I put on my cape and I do these other activities that are more service related. It's more about, I live my life, and through, by being a conscious leader and through that living of my life, I create value in the world. And then because I create value, people see the value, and I'm able to generate revenue for that to sustain my lifestyle. And that to me is what the essence of a conscious leader does, is you challenge with the task of, here's what I'm passionate about doing, but here's what I'm good at for making money. And how do I blend these? You know, and so for me, that's where I decided that conscious capitalism for me was the first movement I ever joined, that I really saw for the first time and felt, where I didn't really feel as though, as a black man, not to say I don't want to be a black man, that mindset, but it's just that when you walk into a room, that's not the first thing you want to be seen as, or viewed as in every instance. And when I was a part of conscious capitalism, I felt people were coming together to talk about what their purpose was. And that was the reason we were talking. Like I met a gentleman who was from South Africa because he was interested in conscious capitalism, and then my name was on the website. He contacted me as the president of the DC chapter, and him and I engaged. And when I saw that he had sent me an email and he had identified where he was from, my initial bias kicked in. And I'm thinking like we shouldn't have anything interesting to talk about, right? I'm thinking like this is not going to go well because he's from South Africa. And I have all these biases because I'm judging him from that perspective. But when him and I began to actually talk and engage, and I realized that first of all, he didn't support apartheid. He actually said he fought it. But the fact that we were able to connect just on the principle of the fact that we had a higher purpose, and that was the reason our connecting thread started. That's why I learned that connecting threads are important, and it led to a very fruitful, engaging conversation. Which he ended up coming to DC. We had lunch. It was really just a wonderful experience. And so for me, that taught me the very valuable lesson that when I build a tribe, because like I said, we're forced into these tribes, whether we want to be or not. And what I'm advocating is that people escape their forced tribe and create their own in tribe that is connected based off people that you choose to add to your tribe. And I've developed a methodology for doing that. So you talk about working with IT firms. My background was system engineering. I spent 20 years working with Booz Allen Hamilton, and that was a wonderful experience because not only did it teach me how to be a system engineer, but it taught me the business of how to think like a businessman and develop business concepts. And so I apply logical thinking to everything that I get involved in. So that's why I'm grateful to be connected with you and learn from you. I definitely look forward to building with you further, but a few more quick questions I want to get in before our time runs out, because one of the things that I learned in reading your website that stood out at me is you said you help people practice consciousness, and I wanted to understand, what do you mean when you say, how do you practice consciousness?
Great question, and thank you for sharing that other. I'm just enjoying getting to know you. So thank you again. Really, so nice to have a kindred spirit again. And yeah, so what I've learned here, let me go back to something that a client said to me. Actually, three clients said to me, "I don't want another catchphrase. I want frameworks."
Hmm.
Because to me, being among many things, being conscious is a matter of skills. So just like any other hobby, to be conscious and to navigate the human condition is just a matter of skills. And I don't mean to oversimplify it, but it is that simple. Because look, we do grow up and we get on the hamster wheel. We just stay unconscious. So we let conditioning take over instead of actually developing how we behave in the world. Again, going back to behavior. And we've focused a lot on the what we do, building businesses and selling products. That's great. We need to continue that. But we don't focus on how we do it. And in the modern world, skills are necessary to literally be a conscious human being. And I mentioned some of them earlier, and I'll repeat them. For instance, presence. If I don't know if I'm present or not, how do I know what emotions I'm feeling? And my emotions can inform my activities, and particularly fear. So, understanding how fear works in our brains and our bodies. Now, today, right here today, we know a lot more, much more scientifically about how our brains and physiology work together to inform our behavior. So now, understanding that, we have roadmaps, real roadmaps, which from neuroscience and science in general and biology, to understand how does this organism work. So presence, emotional intelligence, understanding how pervasive fear is in society and individuals and collectively. Masterful listening, so that I'm not that I'm actually listening to you, speaking from presence. So we get into the whole discussion about alternative facts. And we know now that the brain contextualizes everything. The brain, we don't speak fact to fact. We don't say, okay, you've got a black shirt on, I've got a black shirt on. We're never going to have that discussion. We're going to talk about, how do I feel about this person? What's my intuition about this person? What's my opinion? And that's okay. But all of that requires us to bring a deeper level of awareness and consciousness to our interactions in a modern world. So I can say more, but I want to stop there and see if I kind of answered your question. I mean, I could talk about this for hours, but I'm interested in, notice I'm very curious about you and happy to talk, but I love hearing more about you.
Well, no, you hit the nail on the head, and as you said before, it reminded me of a quote by Haile Selassie. He said, "We need to get to the point where I'm misquoting him, but its essence of its words were, we need to get to the point where the color of a man's skin is no more significant than the color of his eyes." And so you talked about the shirts that we're wearing, right? We don't lead with the fact, you're right. We both got black shirts on. So what does that mean? That gives us the black shirt tribe. you know so for me, I'm loving this conversation, and you know I'm learning at the same time, because again, that's one of the things I love about being, what I define as my core 8 virtues, is that I don't know everything, and that I'm always in a growth mindset. And when you're really dealing with another conscious leader, I should learn from you. There should be something that I can benefit from you, I can gain from you. At the same time, I can share with you, and maybe I can teach you as well. And so, with that being said, one of the questions I wanted to ask you is, and I'm curious about this, why was it important for you to become a social activist? I know that, when you put on your bio, you actually lead with that as one of the first qualities or definitions of who you are as an individuals. And so I'm curious to learn about your belief, how you feel about that.
Thank you for that question. I love the opportunity to answer it. I'm finally owning that I am a social activist. And I'll say, for a long time, I was angry activist. So what I really love, and it goes back to my mission statement of being an exceptional partner to the human race and planet and facilitating global awakening. I just feel
Mm,
like that's what I enjoy doing. I like standing for humans. I like standing for good in the world. And it just feels natural to me to be in favor of socialization, the socialization experimentation. So I'm not going to call it good, bad, or right or wrong. And I see the opportunity for us, and I'll go back to the word behavior, is that there's an opportunity for us all in small tribes, large tribes, and global tribes to ask, what are the behaviors that we want socialized now in this year of 2022 and going forward? Because the way we work and live together is much different than it was. Think about it, early 1900s, we worked in factories, pulling and pushing levers. Well, now our interactions and working is like this. So, how do we cooperate and collaborate? And to me, it's a very exciting social experiment. And we can see that with social media and technology, the advances in technology's advancing faster than we are.
mm,
So we're not equipped to handle the resources we have, for instance, social media and our behaviors. We haven't learned how to behave in a way across cultures, across races, across the globe. So it just feels natural for me to be a part of that. And it's exciting. And it's my own, I include myself in this grand social experiment. I say humans are the wackiest species on the planet, and I include myself in that. So I think the more conscious we are and the more aware we are of ourselves, the more we can experiment in a more compassionate and civil way.
absolutely, absolutely. And I think that that's again, if you were to lead with that, when you began your introduction, I would believe that other conscious leaders will automatically be drawn to that. We can all lead with, here's my resume, here's, all the things I accomplished in my life. But when you lead with that kind of statement, with that kind of passion and the energy that resonates with that, that's what I believe people connect with, right? Because once we understand that everything is energy, as Einstein says, and the energy is everything. When you really truly understand that, then for me, the goal should be to make sure that the energy that you're radiating out comes from a deeper, higher valued purpose in life, right? And then you connect with other people on that same frequency. And that's when you all can really begin to start doing work together. And through that work together, those building of those relationships, transactions, multiple transactions can happen as a result. But the relationship is the actual reason that you're actually coming together to create something, to build something, I like to say. So I know we've reached our time limit, but one of the things I want to give you an opportunity to say is, um, can you share with us two quick things? Your favorite book. What book would you say is this is the book I recommend that changed my life? I love to read it, and I would like to share it with everyone else.
Yeah, that's a, I'm a bit of a nerd with books, so I will say the the person who changed my life is my teacher Gangaji. So any book by her, but there's a particular book that I read that just struck me. It's called a Diamond in Your Pocket.
Hmm,
So meeting her was life changing. So I'll say that, and any book by her. But I met her and read that book, so that was a huge turning point for me in my life.
excellent, excellent. And what contact information would you like to share for the listening audience that may want to get in contact with you, purchase your book, take your course? I'm going to be a definitely a student of both. I'm going to be a reader of your book, and I'm definitely going to take your course because you're speaking my language. I know I'm going to get great value from it. But any contact information you'd like to share with our listening audience would be appreciated as well.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for that. So you can reach me at abigailstason.com. The book is Evolution Revolution. It's a handbook of conscious leadership skills. And you can get my very economic self-study course. It's the bare bones with the book at consciousleadership.online. So you can go to consciousleadership.online and feel free to check anything out. And look, I made the course really economical so anyone can start studying on your own. Don't wait for your company, pick up a book with your spouse, your family, your coworkers, your team. And then I will be putting each of the skills into a comprehensive courses from now until the end of the year and through 2024. I'm going to have a ton of content that I want to share that people are clamoring for. So thank you for that.
Well, thank you for actually living your conscious life. And as one of my conscious leaders I connected with on now talks about being in alignment with yourself. And this is an example of someone who I believe is in alignment with yourself. So again, thank you for your investment of time. Any closing thoughts you want to leave uh, as you close out?
Thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure to be with you. And I would say make learning fun. Like, what's more fun than getting to know yourself, wake up to yourself, and be more conscious? It's a grand experiment.
Absolutely. I completely concur. And again, thank you. This has been King Connections, and we're going to continue to build uh, conversations with conscious leaders. Thank you, Abigail, and look forward to the infinite possibilities that our connections will actually establish.
Me too. Thank you. I like to say we're BFFs already.